What's going on, guys? This is Scramble 18 with Ed, and Eddy Season 2 review. Don't know how I'm going to edit this, but it is time to get started before time runs out. Know-it-all Ed. The hell is that title card? The Eds go to the junkyard where they find a bunch of Canadian squirt guns. After selling them to the neighborhood kids, the whole cul-de-sac becomes a veritable Wild West. This is until the cankers threaten the Eds with their perfume, leading to a war between the two factions. This is possibly the best way to start off a season, showing off your best aspects, such as comedy and quick-paced animation. Dear Ed, Johnny and Plank have separated, so the Eds decide to give Johnny a new friend for a fee, of course. Does it sound strange that they actually pull off a pretty good character-driven story between the friendship of Johnny and Plank? It's obviously not too melodramatic. Some of the best comedy comes from the attempts at a new friend, such as Bob and Salty Sam. Arguably, the best thing it does is tell people that it's okay to hold on to your friends, no matter their aspect of reality. Knock knock, who's Ed? Ed is anticipating an 8-hour monster movie marathon until he is kicked out of his house by Sarah. So for the runtime, they have to find a telly to watch the marathon, leading to Double D pointing out a major flaw. They then attempt entry to Kevin's, and oddly, they discover the movie at Rolf's. You could say this is one of the few episodes where the trio wins, but that may be an overused sentiment. 1 + 1 = Ed. After Ed keeps Eddy up all night with constant inquiries, they go to Double D's, who reveals discovery of workings via disassembly. At first, they take apart things in Ed's garage, but move to Rolf's rather quickly. Rolf then tells of the tale of the ugly boy and the tree of heads. Mysteriously, a tree falls flat as cardboard, and Eddy is able to grow bigger than the neighborhood houses. After this, the whole episode goes to insanity, such as taking off Jimmy's outline, sawing holes in the air, removing Sarah's face, and all manner of bizarrity until reality completely gives out. And when it does, it has the best visuals of the entire series. The whole episode is just one big trip, and understandable why it's considered one of the best episodes in almost everybody's top 10 list. Eeny, meeny, miny, Ed. Eddy decides to have fun with Ed by telling him that Double D engineered the entire cul-de-sac's kids from regular insects. The episode is good, if a smidge forgettable. But what people remember most is, Double D's sticky note. Ready, set, Ed. Eddy gets aggravated about Kevin setting and breaking all the records, and claims to have a rocket car that can travel around the world at amazing speeds, but in actuality, a moving background with cheap landscapes. Of course, Kevin sees right through this and turns the tables on the trio. Hands across Ed. The Eds decide they want to act as if they're in showbiz and run a telethon, supposedly for Ed's unibrow operation. The whole show has some great comedy, but it can be difficult to describe humor without just listing jokes. To put it simple, Rolf's show is the highlight. Floss your Ed. Ed's last baby tooth loosens after biting down on a coconut, so Eddy takes this opportunity to cash it in for the tooth fairy, but figures that forcibly taking out one's tooth is rather difficult and questionable. One of his attempts involves painting a jawbreaker on the fence that Ed falls for, accidentally sucking up Double D. What's good is that Eddy is not accomplishing an unimportant task, so the sympathy is not misplaced, like most. In Like Ed, Kevin runs a rival garage sale and makes bank, leading to the Eds believing he knows inside info. Unbeknownst to them, the neighborhood kids are throwing a party for Jimmy, mistaken as a spy rendezvous, and the Eds give themselves code names and use all sorts of gadgets. These include an X-ray machine, a jetpack, a faux jawbreaker, and a cake analyzer. And in one fell swoop, Jimmy's house is ruined due to the miscommunication. Who let the Ed in? Ed starts playing with an imaginary friend he calls Jib during a prize grabber scam. And he is apparently apathetic towards work and prefers just to play and spin around in a chair all day. Eddy is obviously confounded by this and goes to Johnny, who has no concept of an imaginary friend, but insists on stopping him with an invisible trap. They are finally rid of Jib after this. Home-cooked Eds. The Kenkers invade the cul-de-sac, claiming that they're on holidays. So the main trio need unique methods to exile them, and in the end settle on a mock typhoon. Meanwhile, Johnny attempts to retrieve Plank, whom the Kenker sisters use as a back-scratcher. Ramblin' Ed. After a troublesome seance, the Eds move to Rolf's shed to avoid Sarah, where Rolf discovers the difficult nature of them as tenants. The trio start to mess with the animals, steal all the food, which culminates in Rolf using them as laborers. To Sir with Ed. Eddy is left home alone until Naz appears and oddly starts cooking him dinner. As the other two arrive, they become suspicious that Naz is on a date, when in reality, Eddy's parents hired her to babysit. Later, the urban rangers come, and Kevin, across, and decide to not only berate Eddy, but stay in his house. While Eddy is supposed to be taking a bath, the top story collapses to the ire of Naz, despite that it was not Eddy's fault. This is the major flaw with the episode, results in a difficult rewatch. Key to my Ed. Double D finds a key that Eddy believes to unlock all sorts of random and absurd secrets. They then hold the key for ransom by leaving cryptic notes to the denizens who all know not of the key. After this, the Kanker sisters appear, and the Eds run away when they realize that the key actually belonged to Ed. Urban Ed. Eddy decides to build a faux cardboard city in the lake that enslaves all the kids, aside from Johnny, who believes that it will corrupt the residents as well as his buddy Plank. So many great jokes appear in this episode, like the tattoo parlor, the pigeon, the oink, all that stuff. Stop, look, and in. Eddy starts to find the joys of breaking rules, much to the chagrin of Double D. Notable for having Sockhead taking off his hat for the first time. Really, it's quite interesting seeing what the kids would do without rules in their lives. Honors I Ed. The Eds are dared to go inside a haunted house for a jawbreaker, where they find what appears to be their deepest desires, led in a type of siren call, until they enter a trap leading them to the Kanker sisters for a mock wedding, obviously much to their humiliation. Scramble Dead. Anybody who has stayed up too late, or even not at all, knows where this episode is coming from. Double D is left up all night by building a toothpick replica of the Golden Gate Bridge that only took him. Ed and Eddy are ready to make their newest scam come to fruition, not realizing Sockhead's major exhaustion, and throughout the whole show he is put through numerous situations not too dissimilar to 22 short films about Springfield. Johnny asks Plank about a growth, Kevin broke his bike chain, and Rolf wonders about the lobsters that invaded after the creek was dammed up. Rent a Ed. Eddy sets up a repairman service for the cul-de-sac that accidentally leads to a sauna service after attempts to repair end up rather destructive, leading to Ed destroying Johnny's house a la a missing support beam. Shoe Ed. Johnny's eccentric personality, and being an annoyance to Kevin, leads the Eds to use him as a weapon against the entire neighborhood, so they pay the trio for getting rid of him. It's a rather controversial favorite for me, given what I personally find is that Johnny, not necessarily at his game, but hilarious in this episode, whereas others seem to write it off as being just annoying, when that's the entire point. Ed in a Half Shell. Another majorly underrated story. I love this one. Jimmy is left to the trio, where Eddy initially hassles him against being able to defend himself, but realizes that he can use Fluffy as a sort of carbon copy as himself to aid in his scams. Not only does Jimmy succeed, he manages to surpass Eddy and fool Sarah into getting his money back. It can also get you in the feels by that little moment of a bond that Ed and Jimmy share, even for those brief moments. It's adorable. Mirror, mirror on the Ed. A game of truth or dare results in each of the Eds mimicking each other. Ed imitates Eddy, Eddy imitates Double D, and Double D imitates Ed. It's by far another charming story, given that we are given more insight into the other characters' perceptions of each other. It's a masterpiece not only intellectually, but on a comedic level, given that Double D has to act stupid, Ed has to act cool, and of course Eddy is acting intelligent to the best of his ability. One of the best from any season. Hot Buttered Ed. On a very hot day in the summer, Eddy tries to get the best spot at the creek to beat the heat. Not only that, but he finds Kevin is already occupying it. So, of course, the entire episode centers around the attempts to lure him away. An unimpressive, yet underrated episode that surely should get a little more mentions. High-Heeled Ed. Jimmy, Naz, and Sarah are left as the only clientele for the Eds when the boys are away go-karting. It's always fun to see marketing strategies for clientele that a company has no idea about. Why else do you think people still use Facebook? Anyway, the Eds think they've found their golden goose when Ed spray paints random golden objects and accidentally paints his pants, leading to a brief, if astounding, fight for the trousers. Fa-la-la-la, Ed. After fooling around in Double D's parents' room, Ed is put into the Christmas spirit when he sees a fruitcake, leading to the annoyance of Eddy, insisting on the fact that the current time of year is July. Meanwhile, the kids celebrate Piggy Day, leading to the perfect scam that's unmasked by Ed, now an elf, that leads everybody to the true spirit of Christmas and No-Neck Ed Boy to a caroling scam. Cry Ed. Jimmy receives an over-dramatized injury, resulting in flamboyant escapades for attention by Eddy, much to the dismay of Double D, who insists on helping Johnny through his turmoil, leading Eddy to get his just desserts for faking the need for sympathy. Overall, this season really improved on the slapstick and animation, whereas some episodes may fall a hair short from the last season. Coming up next is Season 3, often characterized by, well, I can't spoil it for you yet.